Hey guys, tonight we journey back, way back, to a time when insomnia didn't mean doom scrolling your phone or lying in bed spiraling about unanswered emails. Instead, we're slipping into the soft, woolen world of medieval convent life. You'll be walking slowly now, your footsteps padding softly across cobblestone pathways, the air cool and damp, scented with old wood, lavender, and something faintly medicinal. You pass under an archway into the cloister, where shadows from flickering candlelight stretch long and silent. Above you, the bell tower stands quiet for now, but not for long. You probably won't survive this, by the way. The schedule's brutal. There's waking up in the middle of the night, long periods of silence, no snacks after dusk, and not a single fluffy pillow in sight. But surprisingly, the women who lived here, medieval nuns, often got better sleep than we do today. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling cozy already, go ahead and drop your location and the time you're watching in the comments. I love seeing where and when we're relaxing together around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open a heavy oak door. Inside, the air is warmer, lit by a few sputtering tallow candles. You've officially entered a Benedictine convent in the early 1300s. It's not the towering cathedral life of the great abbeys. No, this is modest, rural, and self-contained. You're here as a guest, perhaps even as a postulant, someone testing the waters before fully committing to the spiritual life. Lucky you. Your first steps through the corridor are tentative, your sandals slapping against the cold stone floor. The walls are thick, muffling the outside world. A faint rustle of robes in the distance, a giggle quickly stifled, and then the return of quiet. That soft blanket of silence that seems to rest over everything. It's early evening. Supper, simple pottage with maybe a few lentils, has been eaten in silence. You weren't allowed to speak, only to listen as one of the elder nuns read a passage from the Rule of Saint Benedict, or the lives of saints who probably never needed sleep. Your belly's full enough, though not exactly heavy, and there's a surprising satisfaction in the simplicity. No spice, no sugar, no excess, just enough to keep you upright. Your assigned sleeping space is in a cell shared with one or two other novices. The door creaks softly as you enter, revealing a narrow wooden cot with a straw-stuffed mattress, linen sheets stiff with age, and a woolen blanket that scratches just a little but promises warmth. There's a crucifix above your head, and on the shelf beside it, a single beeswax candle and a worn wooden comb. There's no ambient playlist, no temperature control, no herbal sleep mask, but already your shoulders drop. The day's activities, chanting, cleaning, gardening, reading, and praying, have worn out your body just enough. And that's the secret, isn't it? They've structured the entire day around quiet productivity and ritual, things modern sleep experts now claim improve rest. Exercise? Check. Digital detox? Double check. Emotional regulation? You bet. Except instead of journaling, they just confessed to Sister Catherine and got on with their lives. Here, your bedtime routine isn't optional. There's no binge watching or staying up late because you're finally free. The bell rings once, softly, and it means one thing: Compline, the final prayer of the day. You file into the small chapel with the others. The lighting is low, flames dancing along the stone walls. Everyone's seated, back straight, eyes half closed. The prayers begin. Gentle Latin chants rising and falling like waves. You don't need to understand the words. They're lullabies in their own way, rhythmically lulling your senses into surrender. Back in your cell, you slip under the blanket. Outside, an owl calls. A breeze slips through the shuttered window. You think for a moment about how strange it is not to check anything. No messages, no news, no notifications. There is nothing to catch up on. Only breath, only stillness. Historians still argue whether this quiet was stifling or soothing. Did women choose the convent as a haven, or was it simply the best of limited options? But one thing is clear. Within these walls, they mastered a rhythm that many of us have lost. And as your eyes begin to close, you hear that first bell for matins, the midnight prayer. Yes, they get up in the middle of the night. And strangely, it works.
The bell tolls softly, one long, low note drifting through the convent like a sigh. You blink awake, though it hardly feels like sleep was long enough to warrant a full awakening. Around you, a few quiet rustlings. One of the older nuns is already sitting up, her hands folded in silent prayer. No groaning, no fumbling for a snooze button. Welcome to matins, the curious medieval custom of rising at midnight to pray. You swing your legs over the side of your straw-stuffed mattress and feel the chill of the stone floor beneath your bare feet. The candle on the shelf flickers as you light it with a practiced hand. Shadows stretch along the cell walls as your roommate pulls her wimple back into place. It's dark in the corridor. No lanterns, no torches, just the faint halo of each nun's candle as they process toward the chapel like a column of floating lights. Your footsteps are hushed. It's a reverent kind of quiet, but not heavy, almost meditative. This middle-of-the-night rising may seem bizarre to our modern minds. Who, in their right REM cycle, would willingly interrupt sleep? But here's the thing. The two-phase sleep cycle was completely normal in pre-industrial Europe. Historians call them first sleep and second sleep. You drift off shortly after sunset, sleep for a few hours, wake up around midnight, then sleep again until dawn. People might pray, read, tend a fire, or in more secular households, even sneak off for a snack or something cozier. But in a convent, this was holy time. You enter the chapel again. It smells of beeswax and ancient wood. The psalms begin, not sung loudly now, but whispered, breath-like. A few candles flicker in tall sconces, their light dancing on the robes of nuns bowed in prayer. The chanting is repetitive in the most peaceful way. You lose track of the Latin words quickly, something about mercy, about light, about God's eternal watchfulness. The important part isn't comprehension, it's rhythm, it's structure. The ancient Benedictine rule was very clear, ora e labora, pray and work. That's your life now. It's hard to say exactly how long matins lasts, maybe an hour, maybe two. Time bends when you're sleepy and swaying gently in pews, and that's the point. The nuns weren't obsessed with productivity. They weren't trying to optimize their morning routine. They simply rose because the bell told them to. And the bell told them because the rule told the bell. One curious theory, still debated among scholars, is whether this nighttime interruption helped reduce nocturnal anxiety. By waking and praying, the nuns gave space for their minds to be active in a gentle way, without spiraling. It's like a medieval form of guided meditation, except instead of a soothing British voice on an app, you had Sister Agnes murmuring the Psalms. And guess what? The act of rising and returning to bed might have actually deepened the next phase of sleep. Some modern sleep researchers believe that segmented sleep allowed for more vivid dreams, better memory consolidation, and weirdly enough, fewer nightmares. as if the body accepted the temporary wakefulness as part of the program. You're back in your cell now. You extinguish the candle and settle again beneath the wool blanket. The straw mattress creaks softly beneath your weight. There is no rush, no guilt about being awake at midnight, because this midnight moment was designed into the rhythm of your day. Your eyes begin to flutter closed. Outside, the wind has picked up slightly, rattling the shutter. In the next cell over, someone coughs, then silence again. It might surprise you to know that many modern sleep therapists today recommend something surprisingly similar for insomniacs. Get out of bed if you can't sleep. Do something quiet. Read, stretch, breathe, then return when your body is ready. The nuns didn't have to read the studies. They just listened for the bell. And maybe, just maybe, this midnight ritual didn't disrupt their sleep. Maybe it completed it.
You don't remember falling asleep again, but sometime between matins and dawn, your body folds itself back into the straw-stuffed mattress like bread rising under a linen cloth. The world softens. The scratchy wool no longer scratches. And when the next bell rings, lauds this time, you're surprisingly rested. But let's pause here, before the prayers begin again. Let's stay in this space for a moment. It's still dim. The sun has yet to crest the distant hills. This little room you sleep in, your cell, deserves more than a passing glance. It is, after all, your cocoon, your sanctuary, and tonight's main character. The cell is small, smaller than your bathroom, probably. There's your bed, a small bench, a plain shelf, and if you're lucky, a hand-carved cross on the wall. No art, no mirrors, definitely no candle scented like alpine forest with notes of vanilla bean. Yet somehow, it is enough. There's a dignity in the simplicity, a strange, stubborn comfort in having so little to distract you. You wrap your blanket tighter, watching the faint first light slip in through a wooden slat in the wall. The air smells faintly of beeswax, dust, and, oddly, a little like thyme. You don't know where the thyme scent comes from. Possibly someone's robe brushed past an herb basket in the kitchen earlier. Scents carry easily in stone corridors. The walls are stone, cool and rough, with lime-washed plaster that flakes a little when you brush it. It's not pretty, but it doesn't need to be. The goal here isn't aesthetics, it's stillness. The cell teaches you to strip away noise, not just audible noise, but mental clutter. Modern bedrooms, by contrast, often have everything designed for rest. Weighted blankets, blackout curtains, white noise machines, and yet they're also full of distractions. Nuns had nothing of the sort. Their most potent sleep aid was the structure of their space. It was a cell, yes, but also a shell, like a turtle's. It moved with them spiritually. It offered retreat, not confinement. And there's a little-known fact here. Not all nun cells were solitary. In some convents, especially for novices or poorer communities, nuns slept 2 or even 3 to a cell. Yes, that's right. Medieval nuns were essentially early adopters of the roommate experience. And guess what? That too helped with sleep. When your life is organized around routine and your nights are spent beside someone who breathes in sync, you feel safer, more contained. The soft rustle of someone turning over, the faint whisper of a prayer before sleep, these sounds became cues for calm, not distractions. They told your body it was time to let go. And here's a curious aside. Many nuns slept sitting up. Well, not bolt upright, but propped at an angle. Why? Scholars still argue over this. Some believe it was to discourage overly long slumber. Others say it was a holdover from health beliefs that sleeping fully horizontal encouraged bad humors to rise. Whatever the case, the nuns weren't flopped over like starfish. They curled under their wool blankets, half seated, half reclined, and somehow still managed to wake refreshed. There's also this. the cold. These cells weren't heated. The fire in the kitchen or warming room didn't reach here. In winter, you might be lucky to have 2 blankets instead of 1. But cold air, and this is where things get weird, might have actually helped their rest. Recent studies show cooler temperatures improve sleep depth and quality. And nuns? They were basically the original sleeping with the window cracked crew, minus the window. You curl deeper into the blanket now, imagining the thick chill of December stone and the quiet humility of sleeping with breath you can see. It sounds harsh, but it makes your pulse slow, doesn't it? The bell rings again. You rise, not groggily, but with that pleasant fuzziness of a body that's been well used and well rested. You fold your blanket precisely, smooth the straw mattress with a practiced hand, and step back into your sandals. Out into the corridor, another day begins. And while you don't know exactly what will fill it, scrubbing, baking, gardening, scripture, it almost doesn't matter. Because the next time you return to this cell, it will be ready. The stone will be cool again, the linen pulled tight, the quiet waiting. Your cocoon is always there. And somehow, that knowledge alone starts to make you sleepy again.
You shuffle down the corridor, the cold flagstones pressing gently against your soles. The nuns around you move in near silence, like shadows gliding through early morning mist. It's lauds now, the dawn prayer, and soon after, the day will start in earnest. But before you scrub the scullery or tend the turnip beds, let's return to last night, to your sleep, and the odd little rituals that made it smoother than you'd expect in a stone-walled room with a straw mattress. Because here's a truth you're starting to notice. Everything in the convent, every sound, smell, and gesture was part of an unspoken bedtime routine. Let's start with the bed itself. Now, don't picture luxury. There's no feather-stuffed anything here. Your mattress is a cloth sack stuffed with straw. If you're lucky, it's barley straw, not oat straw, which tends to poke. Each week, one of the younger novices fluffs it by hand, redistributing the compacted stalks and removing any stubborn thistles. Is it comfortable? Debatable. Is it grounding? Absolutely. You feel the unevenness beneath you, a rustic kind of cradling that keeps your body aware, yet relaxed. It's like the medieval version of a firm orthopedic mattress with slightly more plant matter. And above you, a single wool blanket, thick, a little itchy, warm in winter, bearable in summer. Nuns didn't use pillows the way we do. Many didn't use them at all. Some had a rolled-up woolen wrap or folded cloak instead. And the height of luxury? A simple linen sheet between your skin and the scratchy wool. A clean one might be issued once every 2 weeks. More often if you're sick, less often if Sister Beatrix is the one doing laundry. Let's talk about lice. Because yes, they were a thing. Nuns, like most medieval people, lived in a constant low-level awareness of lice. It wasn't considered shocking. It was just reality. But here's the twist. The convent actually had better hygiene than most medieval households. Why? Routine. Regular head washing. Combing with fine-toothed wooden combs. And, perhaps your favorite part, lavender sachets. These little bundles of dried herbs were tucked into bedding and robes, not just for scent, but to discourage lice and soothe nerves. Imagine slipping into a scratchy bed on a cold night, your fingers brushing a cloth pouch that smells like lavender, sage, maybe a hint of rosemary. The herbs release their fragrance with body heat. It's primitive aromatherapy, and yes, studies today confirm lavender oil improves sleep quality. They figured that out with 0 peer-reviewed journals. Herbs weren't just for repelling pests either. Some were placed near the bed to ward off nightmares. Rue, chamomile, and even fennel might be kept nearby. Did it work? depends on whether you believe the nightmares were from demons, bad digestion, or just overstimulation from too much scripture. Another curious practice, the bedtime blessing. Before turning in, the sisters often blessed one another, silently or with a whispered "Pax," peace. Not a dramatic ritual, but a gesture of shared serenity. Imagine ending your day not with a text or a final doom scroll, but with eye contact and a whispered word of calm from someone who will sleep 2 cells away. It's startling how soothing that feels, even centuries later. Historians still argue whether this tranquility was felt genuinely or enforced under spiritual pressure. Did the vow of obedience make it easier to surrender to stillness, or did it mask unease? But the result was the same. Bodies moved slowly, deliberately. Voices stayed low. Even the act of undressing became a ritual. Layers folded just so. Robes shaken out to keep pests at bay. Wooden shoes lined neatly beneath the bench. And here's a strange tidbit. Some convents kept night gardens. Small patches of medicinal herbs just outside the cloister, tended quietly before compline or after matins. Just walking through them was considered a balm for nerves. You'd touch thyme with your fingertips, breathe in mint, listen for the night insects. It wasn't quite stargazing, but close, and it let your mind wander in a soft, unhurried way. It's funny, isn't it? You came here expecting austerity, and instead you find a life arranged so carefully around calm, around order, around sleep. You return to your cell after a long day, your knees sore from kneeling, your hands scented of onion from the kitchen. There's no bath waiting, no tea, but there is a woolen blanket, and somewhere beneath it, the same lavender sachet as last night. Still fragrant, still effective. You lie down. The stone walls don't feel so cold anymore. The uneven mattress doesn't jab so much. And even the faint scratching of straw becomes part of the lullaby. You breathe in lavender, dust, thyme. And slowly, the day unwinds from your muscles.
You lie there for a moment, eyes half open in the dark, listening to nothing in particular, just the stillness. Maybe the faint creak of an old beam, the gentle sigh of someone else settling in their cot nearby. But mostly, there's a hush. And that hush isn't accidental. In fact, it's got a name. The Great Silence. Every night after Compline, the final prayer service, the entire convent falls into a profound, deliberate quiet that lasts until morning. No speaking, no whispering, no late-night confessions or noisy footsteps. If you stub your toe on a bench leg in the dark, you deal with it silently, offering it up to God, or at least trying not to mutter something unholy. This isn't just spiritual discipline. It's one of the most brilliant and underrated sleep aids in history. Think about it. The biggest sleep disruptor for most people today isn't drama. It's noise. The distant hum of traffic, a TV in another room, someone watching TikToks with the volume all the way up. But in the convent, the soundscape is curated like a spa. No claims, no chatter, no awkward roommate fights at 2 a.m. Just silence. So thick you can hear your own breath. This vow of silence, called Silentium Magnum, wasn't unique to nuns. Monks observed it too. But nuns, especially those in enclosed orders, took it very seriously. It was meant to reflect inner stillness, a quiet heart. But surprise, it also helped their nervous systems wind down. Modern neuroscientists now argue that auditory overstimulation delays melatonin release. That is, noisy environments make it harder to fall asleep. But the nuns were already ahead of the curve. By muting the entire convent, They created a sound environment where the smallest noises, like a creaking floorboard or a distant owl, felt soothing rather than jarring. And here's where it gets a little odd. Some convents enforced silence so strictly that nuns developed their own sign language for nighttime communication. Not a full sign language like those used today, but gestures, simple, symbolic, and gentle. A finger across the lips meant silence. A palm to the heart meant prayer. If you needed a chamber pot or an extra blanket, there were signs for that too. Imagine it, a whole nighttime world of pantomime. No arguing over who snored, no shouting about missing candles, just the occasional raised eyebrow or vague mime of "someone took my sandals." The great silence wasn't always perfectly observed, of course. In warmer months, windows stayed open and the sounds of crickets or village festivals might sneak in. But inside the walls, peace. And that peace wrapped itself around the body like a second blanket. You breathe more slowly in a space like this. You feel somehow invited to rest. And maybe more importantly, you're not alone in it. See, in the modern world, a lot of insomnia stems from what psychologists call cognitive arousal. Thinking too much, stressing, lying in bed replaying awkward conversations from 6th grade. But in the convent, sleep isn't your personal struggle. It's a shared rhythm. 20 or 30 women all lying down around the same time, all holding the same silence, all surrendering to rest together. It's like a communal trust fall, except into wool. Historians still debate whether the silence was psychologically healthy in the long term. Did it suppress too much? Did it cause emotional bottlenecks? But for sleep, it worked. The quiet gave the mind fewer places to run, and the body could finally exhale. You shift a little on the mattress. Your joints crack gently, your only form of rebellion. Outside, a breeze rustles the herbs in the convent garden. Somewhere far off, a donkey brays into the night and is met with absolutely no response from any nun because they are all asleep, as God intended. Another curious note, no written bedtime prayers were required. Unlike morning devotions or midday chants, the period before sleep was largely unstructured. You could pray silently if you wished, recite a psalm, reflect on your day, or simply lie there and do absolutely nothing. No pressure, no spiritual FOMO, just rest. You might trace a cross on your chest or murmur a line like, "In peace idipsum dormiam." In peace, I will lie down and sleep. It wasn't showy, it wasn't dramatic, but it anchored your mind just enough to drift off. And as you settle deeper, your last conscious thought is strangely comforting. Everyone else is asleep too. No one is online, no one is out partying, no one is making sourdough from scratch at 1 a.m. Everyone, from the abbess to the newest novice, are wrapped in quiet and wool, waiting for dreams. And that silence, it holds you. The silence holds, and so do the shadows. Time moves strangely in the convent. There's no glowing screen telling you it's 1:47 a.m., no glowing reminder that you only have 4 hours left to sleep. Instead, there's a rhythm. There's repetition. There's the predictable comfort of doing the same thing, the same way, every day. And one of the most powerful parts of that rhythm, the Psalms. You remember them from Matins, when you stood barefoot on cold flagstones while chanting voices rose like mist. But Psalms aren't just part of a service. They're part lullaby, part mantra, part medieval sleep playlist, with a surprising dose of poetry. Each nun knew them by heart. There were 150 in total, divided up and repeated on an endless cycle. You might chant Psalm 4 before bed,
The one that ends with, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Or Psalm 91, which promises protection in the dark. "You will not fear the terror of night." You don't need to be religious to understand the comfort here. Repetition soothes the nervous system. Modern therapists call it rhythmic regulation. You repeat a sound, a phrase, a breath, and your pulse slows. Your brain says, "Oh, okay, we're safe now." For the nuns, chanting these verses wasn't performance. It was surrender. The rhythm of the syllables, the slow cadences, the familiar language. They wove a blanket over the mind. Not unlike ASMR, though with a lot more references to shepherds and olive trees. And the kicker? These psalms were usually sung in plain song, a kind of simple, flowing melody with no harmony or beat. No dramatic swells, just a steady, almost hypnotic rise and fall. Like waves, or breathing, or that one friend who tells the same 3 stories, but somehow is always comforting. Imagine lying in bed, hearing those psalms murmured through the stone walls. A dozen women's voices, low and soft, neither trying to impress nor perform, just sharing breath and syllable, one verse after another, as the fire dies low in the kitchen hearth. Here's a lesser-known detail. Some Benedictine manuscripts even include a note beside Psalm 63. "On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night," suggesting it was a common go-to for those who couldn't fall asleep. You know, the medieval version of counting sheep, but with a lot more divine mercy. Historians still debate whether this constant recitation numbed the mind or elevated it. Was it spiritual enlightenment or just rote memory? Did the repetition bring transcendence or simply boredom? The truth, as always, is probably both. But either way, it helped people sleep. And not just nuns, lay people too. Use psalms in this way, especially before printed books, when knowing a few verses by heart was as close as most got to a nighttime read. Grandmothers whispered them while rocking babies. Shepherds muttered them while watching the stars. It was, in a very real sense, a shared cultural sleep ritual. There's something sweetly ironic about it now. In a time before blackout curtains or chamomile tea, before circadian hacks or sleep supplements, they leaned on words. Ancient, slow, oddly soothing words, over and over, until the body let go. This night, you try it. A verse you half remember. "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." You breathe in. "He restores my soul." The Latin echoes faintly in your mind, even if you never formally learned it. Something about the syllables lingers. Dominus regit me. The Lord is my shepherd. You don't have to believe it to feel it working. And just like that, you're halfway to sleep. Again. The walls around you stay quiet. A candle flickers once, then dies. You dream of water and fields, and the soft hum of voices repeating lines older than memory. And somewhere down the corridor, another sister does the same.
When you wake again, it's not because of a noise or a worry or a buzzing phone on your pillow. It's because the sun has nudged its way through the shutters, and the convent has already begun to stir. Not frantically, never that, but with the soft hum of a world unfolding in order. You stretch beneath the wool blanket, bones stiff but somehow rested. Your body feels like it belongs here, as if the stone walls around you had held your dreams in place through the night. And strangely, you're not in a rush, because here, sleep isn't a guilty pleasure or a productivity hack. It's a spiritual practice, a kind of trust fall into the arms of the divine. Yes, really. In medieval convents, sleep wasn't seen as laziness. It wasn't a sign of weakness or indulgence. It was a gift, a moment to be used, not hoarded or avoided. In the rule of Saint Benedict, which governed nearly every Benedictine convent in Europe, there were exact instructions on when to rest, how long to rest, and why rest mattered. And while modern culture tries to tell you that you should sleep faster or wake earlier to win the day, the nuns understood something different, that rest is holy. That's why their days were bookended by structured quiet. That's why prayers happened in the dark. And that's why no one side-eyed you for looking like you fell asleep mid-psalm. Sleep wasn't a break from life, it was part of it. You pull on your robe and make your way to the refectory for the morning meal. It's humble, a hunk of bread, a bit of cheese if you're lucky, and a warm cup of thin ale or water with herbs. You eat in silence again, while a passage is read aloud. No stress, no coffee jitters, just chewing and listening. And what you're listening to, ironically, is probably a story about someone who didn't sleep, a saint who stayed up for nights on end, praying until they saw visions or collapsed into blissful unconsciousness. These stories were admired, sure, but they weren't expectations. Most nuns weren't chasing mystical insomnia. They were chasing balance. One charming historical footnote: some convents recorded sleep miracles, where a nun dreamed of Christ or an angel and woke with a sense of calm or clarity. The dream wasn't the miracle, the peace after it was. And it was taken seriously, not as hallucination, but as revelation. There's even a record of a nun named Hildegard, centuries before Freud, who believed her dreams had meaning, not just religious symbols, but messages about the body, about the world, about balance. She saw sleep not as absence, but presence, not blankness, but insight. And sure, maybe not every nun woke from sleep with divine wisdom. Maybe Sister Gertrude just dreamed about turnips again. But dreams, even mundane ones, were seen as gifts, not distractions. Compare that to modern life, where dreaming is barely acknowledged unless it's vivid enough to tweet about. You clean your eating bowl and return it to the shelf. The rest of the morning will be filled with chores, sweeping, mending, weeding. But you notice something. There's no grind, no talk of being so tired today, or jokes about needing 6 espressos to survive. Because here, sleep isn't fought. It's folded into the day. Even naps, brief ones, were allowed in some convents during summer months. The heat, the extra daylight, the long hours in the field, all considered reasons to pause and rest, without shame. Historians still argue whether this attitude came from theology or practicality. Was sleep honored because it was healthy or because it was part of humility? Did the nuns value it as part of serving God or simply because they had no candlelit Netflix options? Likely both. And even though many convents limited sleep to around 6 or 7 hours, those hours were quality, undisturbed, structured, respected. You return to your cell midday just to straighten it. As you smooth your linen sheet, you feel a flicker of anticipation. Not dread, not the fear of insomnia, just quiet expectation that tonight, once again, the walls will wrap you up and the silence will carry you.
By midday, the convent is slipped into its usual rhythm. Tools clink softly in the garden, someone is singing quietly while kneading bread, and the warm stone walls are humming with the slow breath of routine. You're weeding along the path that leads to the cloister's central fountain, hands damp with earth and knees dusted with pollen. There's something soothing about it, even if you're sweating slightly and that one bee has circled you for the 3rd time. You wouldn't call this leisure, but it's not stress either. And that's the secret to why these nuns slept so well. Their days weren't filled with sprints or panic or endless tabs open in their mental browser. They were designed carefully around natural light, bodily movement, and intentional pauses, all of which played a role in maintaining a healthy sleep cycle long before the term circadian rhythm ever existed. You're starting to notice it, aren't you? The way your body responds to this schedule. You woke with the sun, ate simply, moved deliberately, and now that the sun is high and the chapel bell rings sext, the noon prayer, you feel a pleasant wave of calm pass over you. Not exhaustion, just the soft downshift of a day leaning gently toward rest again. Let's talk about light. Electricity doesn't exist here, obviously, and while that might seem inconvenient at first, it's actually doing wonders for your sleep. Without screens or artificial brightness, the nuns' exposure to daylight followed a clean, predictable arc. Morning chores happened under soft blue light, midday under golden glare, and evenings under the gentle dimming of candles and oil lamps. Modern researchers now know what medieval women just lived. Light is the master switch for your sleep hormones. Bright morning light boosts alertness, yes, but it also triggers the brain to release melatonin about 14 to 16 hours later. That means by the time Vespers arrives, early evening prayers, the body is already coasting towards sleep readiness. And the nuns didn't mess that up with late-night light pollution. No overhead bulbs, no TVs glowing across the room, no endless scroll under the covers. Just flame, gentle, flickering, and dim. It's like nature's own bedtime mode. Another benefit? Meals were small and regular. No sugar crashes. No late-night snacks with glowing wrappers and microwave beeps. Just lentils, grains, maybe a boiled egg and some watered-down wine or herb-infused water. That kept digestion steady, which in turn kept sleep uninterrupted. Now here's a lesser-known part of the convent's daily rhythm: herbal tonics and natural remedies taken after dusk. You're in the kitchen garden now. Around you grow the staples of the medieval herbalist: valerian, chamomile, mugwort, lemon balm, and poppy. The nuns didn't just grow these, they used them carefully, skillfully, sometimes as teas, sometimes steeped in wine, sometimes brewed into simple tinctures stored in clay jars. Valerian root, for instance, was known even then to encourage calm and reduce sleeplessness. It smells like old socks, yes, but it works. Chamomile, with its delicate little daisy-like flowers, made a comforting infusion sipped slowly before bed. Mugwort? A bit more mysterious. Said to aid in dream clarity, it was sometimes tied into small sachets and tucked beneath pillows, not unlike modern aromatherapy practices. Historians still debate how effective these concoctions were, or whether belief and ritual were doing most of the heavy lifting. But either way, they created a powerful association between routine and rest. Even the act of preparing the herbs, selecting, drying, steeping, was calming. A sensory experience. You can picture it, a soft hush over the kitchen as dusk falls, the quiet clink of earthenware mugs, and the steam rising in curls scented with mint and wood smoke. And because the nuns believed that health was connected to humor balance, the ancient theory of bodily fluids governing temperament, they didn't just treat symptoms, they worked to maintain equilibrium. If your mind raced at night, you didn't suppress it with sleeping pills, you adjusted your humors. You bathed your feet, you changed your diet, you prayed more gently. There's something deeply intuitive about it. Not always accurate, sure, but patient, holistic. You rise from your place in the garden as the bell rings again. None of the sisters are sprinting. They finish what they're doing, brush the soil from their hands, and walk, calmly, slowly, back toward the chapel. And you realize that's how the entire day has moved. No rush, no urgency, no burnout. Just a slow current pulling everyone forward and eventually, inevitably, back toward rest. You glance at the sun overhead. You know the light will begin to change soon, that evening will come, that your next sleep is already preparing itself in your body, triggered by this rhythm, this balance, this gentle surrender to light and time and breath. And you smile, because you didn't do anything special today, and yet you're already more rested than you've felt in weeks.
The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the convent courtyard. You trail your hand along the warm stone wall as you walk, the heat from the day still radiating gently into your skin. It's nearly time for Vespers, the early evening prayer, but you're not thinking about that just now. You're thinking about the bell, the bedtime bell. It doesn't clang or ring with urgency. It doesn't sound like a school bell or a fire alarm. It tolls low and soft, 3 notes, drawn out like a deep breath, and it means one thing. The day is ending. Your time of rest is approaching. And somehow, just hearing it shifts something in your chest, like the lowering of a dinner switch in your mind. The bell isn't just a signal, it's a cue. In behavioral psychology, they'd call it a conditioned response, a trigger that tells your brain it's time to change state, to let go, to transition. And these nuns heard it every evening, at the same time, in the same tone, under the same sky, like a lullaby without lyrics. You head toward the chapel for Vespers, and the light through the stained glass windows is a soft gold now. Shadows flicker gently over the stone floor. The air smells of candle wax, old books, and something sweet, probably one of the sisters baking for tomorrow's feast day. Evening prayers are gentle. The words are familiar, the chants slower than earlier. Not because anyone is tired, though you are, but because there's nothing to rush toward. No meeting, no emails, no errands squeezed in before sleep. One historian referred to Vespers as the emotional exhale of the monastic day, and you feel that now. As the voices rise and fall around you, you notice your own breathing change. Slower, deeper. Your shoulders soften. And when the service ends, the bell tolls again, this time for Compline, the final prayer. Then, afterward, after the psalms have been whispered and the candles snuffed one by one, it tolls a final time. That's the bedtime bell. And unlike any alarm clock you've ever used, it doesn't create dread. It doesn't jar you awake or flash angry numbers. It glides through the halls like a mother's hush or a distant foghorn gently calling you in from the sea. And here's a lovely twist. This bell didn't only signal sleep, it signaled safety. You were now under the convent's protection. You were not to be disturbed. The world outside, the bandits, the taxes, the unpredictable weather was held at bay by thick stone walls, and within those walls, the sound of the bell meant you're done for today. What a radical thing, even now, to be done. To have nothing expected of you after dark, but rest. No side hustles, no final check-ins, no mental to-do lists creeping into your pillow. Just the bell and the quiet that follows. And the rituals that came after that bell only deepened the peace. A quick washing of the hands and feet, perhaps with warm water scented with thyme. A brushing of the hair, a folding of the robes. Each motion slow, deliberate, unhurried. In some convents, there was a tradition called the dormitory procession. The sisters would walk silently from the chapel to the dormitory or their private cells in a line, candles in hand. No chatter, no giggling, just the soft shuffle of feet, the occasional cough, and the glimmer of flames lighting the way like fireflies. And in that silence, in that darkness, something shifted inside you again. You were no longer working, no longer serving, no longer choosing. You were just releasing, surrendering to the night. There's a modern theory that this kind of external structure, like a bell, actually helps people with anxiety sleep better. It removes decision-making. It tells the brain you don't have to choose, just follow. And in the convent, that's exactly what the bell did. It told you when to stop, when to fold your hands, when to lie down. It carried the weight of the day away. You're in your cell again now. The candle on the shelf flickers low. Outside, an owl hoots once and is silent. Somewhere down the corridor, a door closes with a gentle click, and the bell's echo still rings faintly in your mind. Low, soft, final. You lie down, and this time you don't even need the herbs, because the rhythm is already in your bones, and the bell is still singing somewhere deep inside your chest.
You're lying in bed now, limbs slowly surrendering to the weight of the day, and your mind is drifting, softly, gently, toward the place between waking and sleep. And then, somewhere in the blur, it happens. You dream. But in the world of the medieval convent, dreams are not idle nothings. They're not just mental noise or Netflix for the unconscious brain. For the nuns, dreams are messages, windows through which divine whispers might sneak in. And sometimes they do. Medieval theology was obsessed with dreams. Were they from God? Were they from the devil? Were they indigestion? Scholars debated endlessly, but nuns often just listened, carefully, and with an astonishing amount of spiritual calm. You roll to one side beneath your wool blanket, trying to recall a faint image from your sleep. Was it a garden? A flickering candle? Someone you didn't recognize speaking without sound? For medieval nuns, dreams were both sacred and practical. They might record them in small journals or relay them to their confessors. Some even interpreted them communally, discussing whether a particular symbol, say a dove or a rising sun, meant divine affirmation or an invitation to deeper prayer. One of the most famous dreamers of the convent world was Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century abbess, mystic, and composer. She described her visions in vivid detail, often using poetic and cosmic language that made scholars squint and scribble furiously. But she wasn't alone. Many nuns, though less famous, reported similar experiences. Dreams of angels, of luminous figures, of gardens filled with impossible flowers. Now, not all dreams were divine. Some were just strange, like the nun in one 14th century account, who dreamt she was being chased by a goose wearing a bishop's hat. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic or just too much barley soup before bed. And yes, nightmares happened too. But unlike today, where a nightmare can derail an entire night, nuns had built-in strategies to handle them. Prayers for protection, psalms recited while half asleep, a small wooden cross clutched under the blanket. Some even placed holy medals or relics under their pillows, believing these would guard the mind during dreams. And in a strange way, this worldview reduced anxiety. If your dream had meaning, it wasn't just a random brain glitch. It was part of your journey, a kind of nighttime conversation with the divine, or at least a chance to examine your soul with a bit more curiosity than fear. You shift again, nestling deeper into the mattress. The straw rustles softly beneath you, like dry leaves in autumn. There's an old convent belief that if you dream of a clear sky, your soul is at peace. If you dream of floods, there may be spiritual upheaval coming. If you dream of bread, you're being nourished, literally or spiritually. Some convents even kept dream dictionaries, written in faded Latin, hidden away with the psalters. And yet, in all this dream diving, there was no demand to control it. No lucid dreaming hacks, no sleep trackers analyzing your REM cycles. Just the gentle understanding that sleep is not silence, it's conversation. That your soul might have something to say once the world quiets down. Imagine the power in that mindset. How much easier it becomes to let go, to drift off, when you believe that sleep is not wasted time, but sacred space. That even your unconscious self might be learning something, healing something. You remember one nun's quiet advice, passed down in a letter from the 1300s. If thou wakest in the night, remember thy soul walketh even when thine eyes are closed. It sounds like something you'd find on a tea bag now, but back then, it was theology. And strangely, it still works, because here, tonight, in the low silence of your candlelit cell, you feel something stir behind your closed eyelids. A flicker of green light, a flutter of a robe in a breeze that doesn't exist. And then, it fades, and you fall asleep again. Not worried, not wondering, just walking, quietly, with your soul.
By the time your eyes open again, the room is still wrapped in soft shadows. The candle has long since burned out, and the faint scent of lavender clings to the folds of your blanket. Your body is warm, but your cheeks are cool, kissed by night air sneaking through the shutters. You stretch slowly, aware of each joint like a hinge creaking gently back into place. But you're not quite ready to rise. Your head is still pleasantly heavy, your limbs satisfyingly still. So instead, you lie there and think about the curious little things that helped lull you to sleep last night. Because the nuns didn't just rely on routine and psalms. They had brews, and not the kind that came with latte art and oat milk. We're talking about herbal snoozes, curious concoctions, lovingly prepared, passed down through scribbled margins and herbals and whispered sister to sister in the garden after vespers. Remedies brewed from plants with names that sound like something out of a fantasy novel: betony, valerian, asphodel, mugwort, and wild lettuce. You sit up slowly and imagine the infirmary where these blends were made. It's not a clinical space, more like a kitchen met an apothecary and decided to live simply. Wooden shelves lined with ceramic jars, each marked in ink: Papaver somniferum for sleep, Melissa officinalis for nerves, Rosmarinus for memory. Each nun learned these herbs the way we learn playlists. Sister Juliana might know which root helps a fussy stomach. Sister Agnes might swear by her mint chamomile blend for nights when her knees ache. And every sister knew that if sleep was elusive, you could knock softly on the infirmarian's door and be handed a small cup of something earthy, bitter, and strangely effective. Historians still marvel at how accurate some of these mixtures were. Valerian root, for example, shows up in both medieval manuscripts and modern clinical trials as a natural sedative. Chamomile, of course, is the eternal bedtime herb. And even poppy milk, made by soaking poppy seeds in water, was used in small, cautious doses, just enough to calm, not enough to alarm. But not every remedy was safe. Let's talk about lettuce wine. Yes, lettuce. The Romans used it, and medieval convents kept the practice alive. Lettuce was believed to have cooling, soporific properties. The recipe? Steep the leaves in white wine, strain, and sip. Some nuns swore by it. Others claimed it made their dreams too vivid. And then there's henbane, a powerful sedative with toxic side effects. Most convents avoided it, but a few more adventurous herbalists used microdoses for severe cases of anxiety or insomnia. One documented recipe, written in shaky Latin, advised adding as much as sits on the tip of a small spoon, which is also the exact amount required to knock out a fully grown monk for 12 hours. Historians still argue whether these brews were genuinely effective or more of a placebo. But here's what we know. The act of preparing them, the careful gathering of herbs, the boiling of water, the waiting for it to cool, signaled the body that sleep was on the way. Like tea before bed, or washing your face, or changing into pajama pants and declaring the day officially over. And let's not forget the vessels themselves. These brews were often sipped from small clay mugs or handled glass, cool to the touch, slightly rough, handmade.
You could feel the grooves from the potter's fingers, a tactile reminder that someone shaped this for you, for this moment, that the act of rest was worth preparing for. You lie back now and imagine a sister, perhaps Sister Clara, kneeling over a steaming pot, stirring gently, humming something off-key. She ladles the brew into a mug, wraps it in cloth, and walks barefoot to your door. No words, just a nod, and the warm scent of herbs when you lift it to your lips. It's not just a drink, it's a lullaby in liquid form. And then there were pillow herbs, small sachets of lavender, rose petals, chamomile, and crushed hops, tied with linen string, slipped under your head. Some included apple peels, dried and aromatic, believed to cool fevered thoughts. Others held sweet woodruff, thought to chase away nightmares. A few even had clove-studded oranges hung nearby to keep the air sweet. None of it was flashy. All of it was thoughtful. You don't need to be an herbalist to understand why it worked. The scent, the warmth, the familiarity, it anchored your mind. It told your body, you're safe now, you're home. You lie in bed now and think about your own bedtime rituals, the screens, the alerts, the late-night snacks and sleep podcasts and half-hearted stretching routines. And you wonder, quietly, what would happen if you brewed your sleep instead of battling for it? If, like the nuns, you treated rest not as a reward, but as a sacred duty. You close your eyes, and somewhere deep in your bones, you swear you can taste chamomile.
The convent is quiet again. You're in your cell, lying still, and all you can hear is the distant hoot of an owl and the faint creak of wood as the building settles into its own kind of slumber. You shift a little under your wool blanket, feeling its scratchy edges tug gently at your linen nightrobe. Tonight, like every night, the world beyond the stone walls fades into nothing. But inside? Inside, you're surrounded, quietly, peacefully, by other sleepers. Because one of the often overlooked realities of convent life is that most nuns didn't sleep alone. In fact, for many, communal sleeping was the norm. Large shared dormitories, rows of beds, or straw mats, and the gentle symphony of breathing, coughing, snoring, and blanket shifting that came with it. And oddly enough, that shared space helped sleep, not hindered it. You lie there and listen. To your right, the soft breath of Sister Joanna. To your left, the occasional sigh of Sister Margaret, who always takes a while to settle, but sleeps deeply once she does. You're not talking. You're not even moving much, but there's comfort in their presence. You are not alone in your rest. In some orders, especially the stricter Benedictines, nuns slept fully clothed, in habits or at least in modest underrobes. Beds were simple, no fluffy duvets or curtains, just closely spaced cots, blankets, and maybe a cross or icon hanging from the ceiling beam. Privacy? Not really a thing. But the absence of solitude didn't mean discomfort, it meant security. You could rest knowing someone else was near. If you cried out in a dream, you wouldn't have to explain. If you rose for a midnight prayer, someone else might already be awake. If you stirred in worry, the soft, steady breath of the woman beside you might calm you more than any tonic. Modern science backs this up too. In certain studies, sleeping near someone, even without touching, can reduce cortisol levels and stabilize heart rate. It's like the body instinctively senses it's part of a pack. And in a convent dormitory, you were surrounded by that pack every night. Of course, there were downsides. Some sisters snored, some shifted endlessly, and yes, some had unsettling nighttime habits, like Sister Ambrosia, who once sat up mid-sleep and recited Psalm 22 in perfect Latin before collapsing back onto her straw mattress with a groan. But for the most part, the shared sleep space fostered a sense of rhythmic trust. You moved as a group. You breathed as a group. You surrendered together. In fact, this synchronization extended beyond the night. The whole convent was designed around coordinated rest. Everyone went to sleep at the same time. Everyone woke up at the same time. Meals were together. Prayers were together. Even moments of silence were mutually observed. The human body, which loves patterns, had no choice but to settle into a reliable cycle. Historians still debate whether this lack of individuality was freeing or stifling. Did it bring peace or crush the soul? But many nuns wrote of it fondly. The shared pace of their days and nights helped them avoid the jagged edges of isolation. Sleep wasn't a private battle, it was a communal surrender. And that surrender included nightly habits. Every nun had her rhythm. Sister Beatrice would braid her hair tightly before bed, humming softly through her teeth. Sister Claire always double-checked her blanket corners, folding them diagonally with military precision. One novice insisted on whispering the same 3-line prayer under her breath over and over until her lips went still. You had yours too now. The way you folded your robe, the way you adjusted your pillow straw, the tiny exhale you always released when the lights went out. And those habits, repeated each night in the quiet presence of others, began to build a path in your brain. Like walking the same forest trail until it becomes a groove in the earth. Sleep didn't have to be earned. It was simply entered. In the modern world, sleep often feels like a private war. You lie alone, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with thoughts that bounce like moths against the glass. But here, in this ancient dormitory, with nuns on either side and the bell tower watching overhead, you're just one heartbeat in a long, slow rhythm. And the rhythm is always moving, always waiting. You close your eyes now, listening to it, to the soft breath of Sister Joanna, to the rustle of linen, to your own chest rising and falling in time. You're not thinking about the past or the future, just the room, the night, the quiet trust of shared sleep.
The moon hangs high above the cloister garden, its pale light filtering in through the shutters and casting faint, shifting patterns across the walls of your cell. You stir slightly beneath your blanket, not fully awake, but hovering in that delicate space between dreams and awareness. And then, footsteps. Not loud or hurried, just the gentle patter of leather soles across stone. Someone moving quietly through the corridor, careful not to disturb the sisters who still sleep. A guest has arrived. It happens more often than you'd expect. Travelers, pilgrims, or even high-ranking clerics sometimes seek shelter in the convent for a night, or 3. And while the sisters are known for their hospitality, they're also known for their impeccable bedtime boundaries. Because when the convent goes quiet, it stays quiet. You sit up slightly, pulling your blanket around your shoulders, listening as the outer door creaks open. It's always the same, a humble knock, a whispered explanation, and the abbess or quarter deciding where to put the guest. If it's a woman, especially a noble woman or a widow, she might be given a cell for the night. If it's a man, he doesn't make it past the guest's hall. And that's not just about modesty. It's about maintaining the convent's sacred quiet. You're not here to entertain. You're here to rest, to reflect, to protect the rhythm that sustains you. Still, guests bring disruption, however small. The smell of travel, horse, mud, fire smoke clings to their robes, the creak of unfamiliar boots, the awkward whispers of someone trying not to cough during compline. And yet, even here, the convent has systems in place.
The guest mistress, often one of the more diplomatic sisters, is in charge of smoothing the transition. She offers food, prepares a bed, and explains, gently, that in this house we do not speak after the bell. In this house we sleep early and we sleep well. One curious footnote: some convents offered a herbal bundle to guests struggling with the strict bedtime. A small cloth sachet, tucked under the pillow, filled with calming herbs and a sprig of rosemary. For remembrance, yes, but also to keep away unwelcome dreams. Imagine receiving that in place of a mint on your pillow. And of course, sometimes guests snored, loudly, or muttered in their sleep, or woke too early and knocked something over. In those moments, the nuns didn't sigh or scold. They simply folded the disruption into their rhythm. A missed hour of sleep was offered as a small act of service, a kind of living prayer. You lie back again, thinking of how rare that mindset is today. How easily we snap when a neighbor slams the door, or a dog barks, or someone's phone buzzes on a nightstand. But the nuns, they expected interruption, and they had already decided, long before it arrived, to meet it with calm. Historians still discuss how often guests truly disrupted convent sleep. Some suggest they brought novelty and gossip. Others claim they were treated with holy indifference. What's clear is that the boundaries remained intact. Guests were welcome, but they were gently absorbed into the convent's pace, not the other way around. One tale from a 15th century convent recounts a noblewoman arriving with a full entourage, demanding warm water, fresh bread, and extra candles. The abbess, very politely, handed her a blanket and pointed her to a small room near the laundry, where she could reflect in quiet. The noblewoman later wrote that she'd never slept so deeply in her life. You smile at the thought, because that's the secret, isn't it? The convent doesn't change for you, you change for it. And even those brief disruptions, the creaking door, the rustling guest, become part of the lullaby. A reminder that while the world stumbles and clatters and arrives late at night, this place, this bed, this rhythm remains untouched. Outside your shutter, the footsteps retreat. The outer door clicks closed, and with it the silence returns, soft, warm, and familiar. You pull your blanket higher and let your eyes slip shut once more. And in the distance, you swear you hear someone whisper, "Peace, be still." Morning comes gradually in the convent. There are no alarm clocks, no vibrating watches, just the slow shift of shadow into light, and eventually the gentle peal of the chapel bell. But tonight, you're still wrapped in the safety of darkness, and we're slipping back in time a little, into one of the most important and subtle allies the medieval nun had for a good night's sleep: candlelight. Not just any light, not the harsh, buzzing, fluorescent glow that floods your modern room even when you'd rather be easing into sleep. No LED backlight, no glaring screens, just the soft flicker of flame, golden, unpredictable, alive. You sit up briefly and reach for the stubby beeswax candle on your shelf. You strike flint against steel, and after a few clicks and sparks, the wick catches, a tiny bloom of fire, gently swaying in the draft from the shutter. This is how every evening in the convent begins, with one light, not many. Darkness is never banished, it's simply partnered with. The candle doesn't overwhelm the room, it warms it, tames it. In convents across Europe, candles were prized.
They were expensive, made in-house from beeswax or tallow, depending on resources. Tallow smelled a bit like cooked meat, while beeswax smelled like honey and clean linen left out in the sun. Guess which one you're using tonight. And because candles were scarce, their use was regulated. Most sisters had only one per evening. That meant your time after Compline was precious. No mindless scrolling, just enough light to read a few lines of scripture, or to pray, or perhaps to sit in stillness as the flame danced. Here's a charming tidbit. Some convents made watch candles, tall, thin sticks of wax marked at intervals. Each line represented 15 minutes or so. As the candle burned down past each notch, it tracked time for those praying in the early hours. Medieval sleep meet medieval time management. But more than timekeeping, candlelight shaped sleep in subtle, powerful ways. Modern research confirms what the nuns already knew without needing a single peer-reviewed study. Artificial light delays melatonin production. In other words, bright bulbs trick your body into thinking it's still daytime, even when your bones know otherwise. The soft, golden hue of firelight, however, it encourages rest. It tells your body, hey, the sun's gone. Time to wind down. It makes your pupils widen. It slows your blink rate. It pulls you inward. Historians still debate whether the medieval use of light was ritual, necessity, or accidental genius. But no matter the reason, the result was the same. A rhythm synced to the sun, not to the demands of a glowing rectangle. And there's a sensory element too. The tiny hiss of wax melting, the smell of burning wick, the subtle glow that turns stone walls from cold gray to soft honey. You don't see details, you feel them. The flicker catches in your eyes, warms your hands, and casts shadows that move just enough to make you drowsy. It's intimate, but not lonely. You lie back down, candle still burning for a final moments. The flame shifts with your breath, like it's watching you, like it's waiting. You study the ceiling as the light fades and the walls grow long and tall again. Some nuns believed candlelight was protective, not just practically, but spiritually. A small flame to keep the darkness honest. There's an old belief recorded in one northern French convent that where a holy flame burns, no demon dares rest. You're not worried about demons tonight, but still the thought is oddly comforting. And when the candle finally gutters, slowly, not suddenly, it doesn't leave you cold. It leaves you ready. Ready for the deep dark, the sleep that follows the flicker. Not the kind of sleep you collapse into after too much stimulation, but the kind you glide into, as if the whole room was designed to carry you. You pull the blanket close around your chin. The smell of beeswax lingers in the air. Outside, the moon climbs a little higher. No clocks ticking, no screens glowing, just the quiet knowledge that you were never meant to fight the night, only to join it.
You wake before the bell, which is a rare and strangely luxurious thing. The world is still cloaked in that deep, dark blue before dawn, the hour when the stars begin to fade, but the sun has not yet risen to take their place. And yet, you're awake. Not startled, not restless, just awake. In that quiet space where thoughts are soft and time feels elastic. You stretch beneath your blanket, hear the distant shuffle of someone else waking too, and realize this happens sometimes. even in the most serene convent, not every night brings perfect sleep. Some evenings your body resists the rhythm. Some nights your thoughts spin a little too long. Maybe it was the turnip stew. Maybe a prayer stirred up something. Maybe the moon was just too full. And so you ask the question, what did a medieval nun do when she couldn't sleep? The answer isn't exciting, but it's beautifully human. She didn't panic. She didn't count hours backward from the morning bell. She didn't try to calculate how her productivity would suffer tomorrow. She simply got up. There are accounts of nuns who, unable to fall back asleep, would pray silently at the foot of their beds, not out of guilt or desperation, but peace. It was understood that sleep came from God, and if it didn't come, perhaps there was a reason. Perhaps the soul had more to say. But not all wakeful nuns turned to prayer. Some reached for their embroidery hoops, a small piece of linen, a bit of thread, and the repetitive motion of stitch after stitch, quiet, meditative, and deeply satisfying. It wasn't being productive. It was just something gentle to do until sleep returned. You imagine the faint scratch of a needle through cloth, the flicker of a candle, the occasional yawn. No stress, no self-judgment, just you, a bit of thread, and the sound of your own breath. Others would sit by the shuttered window and listen. The rustle of wind, the coo of night doves. Sometimes in warmer months, they'd peel a small pear from the garden, saved from supper, and eat it slowly. Not because they were hungry, just for comfort. The sweetness, the texture, the act of chewing, all subtle cues that nudged the body toward sleep again. One record from a 14th century Italian convent mentions a nun named Lucia who would press dried rose petals between pages of an old psalter when she couldn't sleep, so that beauty might rest in silence, she wrote in the margin. There's no theology behind it, just a gesture, a way to keep still. Historians still debate how frequent insomnia was in monastic life. Was it common? Was it spiritual? Was it diet-related? But most agree it was not seen as a failure. It was just part of being human. And when a nun felt the lull of sleep returning, she didn't delay. She'd blow out her candle, tuck the embroidery away, and slide beneath her blanket with the same calm she would bring to prayer. No catching up, no shame, just return. Modern sleep experts recommend something similar now. Don't force sleep. If it won't come, leave the bed. Do something quiet. Return only when drowsy. Sound familiar? The difference is the nuns didn't need a TED Talk to tell them that. They already knew their bodies weren't machines, that some nights would be different, that rest could take many forms. You lie there now in your own version of that in-between hour. You consider the rhythm of your breath, the shape of the darkness, the scratch of your sheet against your ankle. You think briefly about rising, about writing something or sipping water, or just sitting with your thoughts. Or maybe you'll just stay here a while. Because sometimes waking isn't the enemy of sleep. It's part of the process. And as your mind settles again and your limbs relax, you let go of the need to fix anything. You simply close your eyes, and this time you drift off without trying.
This morning, you rise slowly, a little more aware of your knees than usual, but still rested in that quiet, grounded way only this kind of life allows. The air in your cell is crisp, and as you fold your blanket and stretch your arms toward the low ceiling,
you hear the soft clang of a pail outside the door. It's bath day. Now, don't get ahead of yourself. This doesn't mean scented bubbles and the soak with a novel. Medieval convents didn't offer luxury, but when it came to hygiene, especially for women living in close quarters, they were surprisingly thoughtful. And while daily showers weren't a thing, nor frankly expected, cleanliness was still practiced and valued, especially before sleep. You step outside your cell with your robe drawn close, and there she is, Sister Aldetrude, already hauling warm water from the kitchen hearth to fill a small basin in the corner of the cloister's modest washing room. You nod in quiet thanks. No one says much. Bath days are serious business. Once a week, maybe twice in summer, nuns had the opportunity for what they called a holy cleansing. A full bath wasn't always possible, depending on the convent's wealth or access to water, but a full-body wash with cloths, soapwort, and herbal rinses? Very likely. The process was simple, but deliberate. You'd be given a few minutes of privacy behind a canvas screen. A basin, a pitcher of warm water, a cloth. Soap, if available, made from lye and animal fat, though in better supplied convents, soapwort, rosemary oil, or even ashes steeped with lime were used. Not exactly spa day material, but remarkably effective. And then came the best part, drying off by firelight. In some convents, there was a small warming room, calefactory they called it, where you could sit for a few precious minutes beside the embers and let your skin dry naturally while sipping warm herbal tea. You feel it now, the damp cloth in your hands cooling slowly as you press it against your arms, the warmth of the fire creeping over your legs like a blanket pulled fresh from the hearth. And afterward, sleep. Bathing wasn't just about hygiene. It was about resetting the nervous system. There are records of nuns describing post-bath evenings as light in body and clear in spirit. Some even wrote of having more vivid dreams after a wash. One sister in 1311 claimed that after a rosemary rinse, she heard angels singing in her sleep. Could have been the rosemary. Could have been the sheer joy of having clean feet. Modern science, of course, now confirms this. A warm bath before bed helps regulate core body temperature, prompting better, deeper sleep. But the nuns didn't need data. They just had instinct and routine. And while bathing wasn't daily cleansing rituals were. Every evening before Compline, you'd wash your face, hands, and feet, especially your feet, with a damp cloth and a splash of rose water or vinegar. The act was simple. The impact was profound. It wasn't about perfection. It was about resetting the body for rest, wiping away the work of the day, literally and symbolically. There was even a small whispered prayer some sisters said while washing. Lord, cleanse not only my hands, but my heart. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't performative. Just a little whisper in the candlelight. Even the act of combing the hair, done once or twice a week, was a kind of ritual. A slow, careful untangling. One sister combing another's hair with murmurs of prayer or gentle silence between them. They didn't wash it often, but they tended it. And they tended sleep in the same way. With touch, with care, with warmth and water and the soft scrape of wooden combs and linen towels. You return to your cell now, skin faintly scented with rosemary and smoke, toes tingling from the warm stone floor. Your blanket feels softer than usual against your freshly bathed arms. You lie down, and your body sighs with the memory of warmth, of touch, of water.
Because sometimes, all it takes to call Cleaser closer is a bowl of warm water and a quiet moment to yourself.
The days pass softly now, one folding into the next like pages of the same well-worn book. You rise, you pray, you sweep, you kneel. You peel root vegetables, you hum psalms, you sleep. And always, always, you rest without rushing. Because here's one more reason these nuns slept better than most of us do today. They lived in a world almost completely free of clocks. There was no ticking on the wall, no countdown timer blinking ominously beside the bed, no smart device whispering, "You've only got 4 hours left before your alarm goes off." In the convent, time was measured in bells and sunlight, not in minutes and stress. You lie in bed tonight with no sense of how long it took you to fall asleep yesterday, or whether it will take 10 minutes or 30 tonight, because here, nobody is keeping score. You remember what the rule of Saint Benedict said about sleep. Let the brethren sleep clothed and girded, and let them rise without delay when the signal is given. That was it. No precise calculation, no punishment for tossing and turning. Just rest when it's time, rise when it's time, and don't worry about the math. Compare that to your world now. Screens glowing with timers and graphs, apps telling you that last night's sleep was only 78% efficient, smartwatches buzzing at your wrist, diagnosing rest like a malfunction. You fall asleep trying to sleep. You wake up trying to analyze it. But in the convent, sleep just happened. You didn't count it, you didn't judge it, you didn't try to hack it. You simply obeyed the bell, followed the rhythm, and let your body do the rest. Even the way time was felt here was different. The nuns lived by the canonical hours, 8 fixed points in the day when prayer marked the passage of time. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. It sounds like a lot, and it was. But instead of constantly measuring how much time remained, they were invited to notice the time as it passed. Each bell was a call not to hurry, but to anchor. And this changed how they approached sleep. They didn't fret over whether they were getting enough. They didn't lie in bed counting the hours until sunrise. If they woke early, that was a gift, time to pray. If they slept deeply, that was a mercy, God granting them renewal. There's something beautifully subversive about that. And not all convents were the same. Wealthier abbeys sometimes had mechanical water clocks, devices that measured time by the slow drip of water from one bowl to another. They were accurate enough to ring a bell at set intervals, but still moved at the speed of nature. You can imagine it, can't you? A dark little alcove in the corner of the abbess's chamber. The steady drip, a brass bell lightly tarnished, a chain lowered by hand to signal the time for lauds. No glowing screen, no sharp tone, just time moving like water. Historians still argue whether this clockless world was truly peaceful or simply less demanding. But here's what's clear. Without numbers blinking at you all day and night, the pressure to perform sleep vanished. You return to your cell now. The candle is nearly gone, the flame low. You pull the blanket close, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't care what time it is. You know the bell will come when it comes. You know the sun will rise when it's ready. And until then, you have all the time in the world.
Tonight, as you settle into your cell once more, you pull the blanket up beneath your chin and stare into the dark. The stone wall is just inches from your face, smooth in some places, pocked in others.
holding centuries of breath and silence. You've grown used to this room, its chill, its scratch, its rhythm. But for a moment, let's step outside these familiar walls. Let's look beyond the convent to the larger world, because not everyone in medieval society slept like this. And understanding who didn't sleep well makes it even clearer why the nuns had it so good. Let's start with peasant women. Most lived in small, crowded cottages, often a single room shared by parents, children, livestock, and occasionally a neighbor or two. There was little privacy. The beds, if they had them, were crammed into corners or lofts, often shared by multiple people. You might fall asleep with a toddler on one side and a goat on the other. And forget silence. The hearth smoked, babies cried, the roof leaked. If the pig stirred, someone had to get up. Sleep came in fragments, short, fitful pieces snatched between chores and cries. There were no bedtime rituals, just exhaustion. Compare that to the convent. Stone walls, quiet halls, structure, predictability. Nuns were among the few medieval women who could expect undisturbed rest. Because unlike most women of the time, they weren't raising children, tending drunks, or patching roofs at 2 a.m. They were praying, gardening, reading, and sleeping. But what about monks, you wonder? Surely they had similar routines. They did. But even among monastic communities, women often fared better. While many male orders were stricter, mandating sleeping on boards or rising from multiple nighttime prayers, female convents often allowed for slightly more leniency, especially as time went on. Historical records suggest that abbesses quietly stretched the rules. A bit more warmth here, an extra blanket there. And the sleeping spaces? More humane. Male dormitories were often vast and drafty, with fewer comforts. But nuns, especially in wealthier or independent abbeys, created cells that were personalized, private, and profoundly peaceful. One 15th century account from Germany describes how a group of nuns petitioned for woolen undersheets in winter, citing poor sleep and aching joints. The abbess granted it. For rest, she wrote in her margin notes, must be part of obedience. And even beyond Europe, in places where Christianity had only lightly touched, similar patterns emerged. Women in spiritual communities, from Buddhist nuns in Japan to mystics in the Islamic world, were often granted spaces of quiet and solitude denied to most of their secular sisters. Not always, not everywhere, but often enough to form a pattern. Historians still debate whether convents were sanctuaries or prisons. Were women truly free here, or simply confined more gently? But one thing is clear. For many, the convent was the first time they'd ever truly rested. No wailing infants, no unpredictable men, no back-breaking field labor until dusk. Just prayer, rhythm, and soft sleep. You lie back now, understanding the weight of that privilege. The quiet in your cell isn't just a spiritual tool, it's a social gift. And as your thoughts drift further, you wonder how many women across the centuries pressed their palms together in the dark, whispering thanks, not for food or forgiveness, but simply for a room of their own. You roll onto your side. Your body finds its familiar spot in the mattress, and you imagine a girl, perhaps 15, perhaps 40, kneeling for the first time in a convent chapel, hearing the Compline bell and realizing, this will be my bed, my silence, my sleep. Not perfect, not interrupted, but mine. And finally, enough.
It's deep night again now, and the convent is still, save for the occasional breath of wind sneaking through an imperfect shutter. Your cell, small and spare, has become more than just a place to sleep. It's become a ritual in stone, a rhythm in walls and linens and sighs. But tonight, you find yourself lying there a bit more aware, a bit more reflective. Because after all this, after psalms, herbs, bells, blankets, shared breath and silence, you start to realize they were onto something. You think about how the world sleeps now, the endless tricks, the gadgets, the endless market of magnesium gummies, sound machines, blue light glasses, bedtime apps with celebrity whispers. You think of how sleep has become a problem to solve, a puzzle to optimize. But the nuns? They didn't solve sleep. They honored it. Tonight, let's walk back through what they knew and what we've forgotten. They knew that structure matters, not just rigid routine, but gentle rhythm, a sense of order. Wake, work, eat, pray, rest, repeat. Not every moment crammed, not every second scheduled. Enough to keep you moving, not enough to keep you anxious. They knew that environment matters, that silence isn't an absence, it's a balm, that shadows can soothe, and that a well-placed lavender sachet might do more for your rest than any App Store subscription. They knew that your body will rest when it feels safe, when it feels part of something bigger. Whether that was God, community, or the Daily Bell, they trusted in it. They didn't try to force sleep. They trusted it would come. And most of all, they knew that sleep wasn't the enemy of virtue or strength or productivity. It was part of the soul's work. You stir in bed, one arm tucked beneath your cheek, and let your mind drift through centuries of forgotten wisdom, like how some convents practiced holy drowsiness, a term for that cozy, blessed haze between wakefulness and sleep when thoughts quiet and the spirit softens. Or the abbess who once said, "Sleep is the last surrender of pride." Or the nun who scribbled in the margin of her breviary, "I prayed until my chin hit my chest, and it was good." Historians, of course, still argue whether this serenity was real, whether the peace was genuine, or just something painted in retrospect. But that doesn't really matter to you now, because lying in this room, under this blanket, with the silence around you like a warm, invisible hand, you feel it. You feel the wisdom, not in words or footnotes, but in bones. And it's not just something old, it's something still possible, even now. You might not live in a convent, you might have traffic outside your window, and an inbox full of neon reminders. But maybe, just maybe, you can borrow something from the nuns tonight. A slower rhythm, a darker room, a whispered prayer, a candle. Maybe tonight you'll rest not like someone dodging exhaustion, but like someone stepping into a rhythm that's been waiting for you. And maybe tomorrow you'll carry that rhythm into your day, quietly, softly, without pride. Like a nun with well-combed hair and slightly stiff knees, greeting the sun with steady eyes. Because sleep, as it turns out, isn't a luxury, it's a legacy. And it's yours too.
You don't remember falling asleep again, but you wake slowly now, warm beneath the scratchy wool, the faint light of early morning pushing gently against the shutters. The bell hasn't rung yet, but you know it will. You can feel it in the rhythm of the place, in your chest, in the way even your dreams seem to follow a quiet liturgy. You stretch beneath the blanket, one arm up, one leg sliding slowly across the straw-stuffed mattress. It creaks just slightly. Someone down the hall coughs. A bird chirps once, tentatively, like it's checking to see if it's too early to start the song. You don't rush to rise.
because here there is no hurry. This final morning in the convent is just like the others. Simple, dim, predictable, and deeply restful. As you lie there, you realize you've begun to think in the rhythm of bells, to breathe in the tempo of candlelight and folded linens. Your mind no longer races when you close your eyes. It walks, wanders, waits. Like the prayers that hummed around you all week, floating through stone corridors and echoing in soft chants long after the mouths that spoke them had gone quiet. Last night, you slept as the nuns slept, not perfectly, not even interrupted, but with peace. And maybe that's all sleep ever really needed. Not control, not perfection, just permission. You stand and stretch again. Your robe slips over your shoulders like habit and memory. The blanket folds itself without you thinking. Your sandals wait where they always do, lined up beneath the bench. Outside, the convent stirs to life again. There will be porridge, maybe stewed apples. You'll sweep the cloister floor, maybe water the herbs. There will be vespers and compline, and the quiet joy of doing nothing particularly remarkable all day, and doing it well. And tonight, you'll return to this cell, this straw bed, this candle, this silence. And you'll sleep. Because sleep doesn't ask for brilliance, just stillness. And that's what you've learned here. That a good night's rest isn't earned by exhaustion or biohacks. It's shaped by rhythm, trust, surrender. Like a bell that rings just once, softly, calling you back to yourself, calling you home. So now, with the story quiet and your mind slow, let's stay right here a little longer. There's no more convent to walk through tonight, no more herbs to list or psalms to hum. Just you, your breath, and the warm hum of stillness. You don't need to move, or think, or do. Let the silence hold you the way the stone walls held those women for centuries. Let the rhythm you've been walking in settle deeper into your bones. Feel the straw mattress under you, imperfect, uneven, but enough. Feel the scratch of the wool against your fingertips, the cool air on your cheeks, the echo of quiet that lives not just in old stone, but in your own chest when you finally stop trying. You are safe here. Nothing left to fix. No alarms, no clocks, no urgency. Just the breath, in and out. Like a tide. You are resting exactly as you were meant to. Softly, slowly, without expectation. The candle has gone out. The bell will not ring for hours. And even then, it will ring softly. So sleep now. Let the psalms fade. Let the rhythm carry you. And let the silence, like a long-lost friend, lead you gently into the dark. Good night. Sweet dreams.